Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to share with you the books that I read in November. Quick note, this is Melissa at the end of filming this, and I've just realized I've talked forever, and I prefer my videos to be on the shorter side, so I think I am going to split this into a wrap-up of the fiction I read and then the nonfiction that I read. Editing it into two separate videos might make for some weird jump edits or something. But on to my nonfiction or fiction reads, whatever version of this you were watching right now. First, I would like to talk about Hood Feminism by Mikki, Kendall. Notes from the women that a movement forgot. So this is all about intersectional feminism, and overall I think this book is really good, but it wasn't what I was looking for. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think there are people like me out there who are looking for something specific and think this might be it. But I do think this has its audience. So I will say this is an excellent overview of intersectional feminism. It's very basic information, but it covers basically everything. So if you're someone who doesn't really understand intersectional feminism or hasn't really heard of it and would like to learn more, and you're coming in without a whole lot of knowledge, I think this is an excellent choice. But if you were looking for something that is a little bit of a deeper dive that goes into these topics and explains a little bit more, the history of the feminist movement around different issues, if you're someone who wants like lots of sources, then I don't think this is for you. And that's really my only complaint about it, was it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was looking for something maybe more academic with lots of sources. So I don't want to say that there weren't sources cited. I feel like I wanted the primary source. I wanted to go to the root of the information. Again, not that I doubt the issues that she's bringing forward, but I wanted to see the specifics. Where's this information coming from? I want to learn more about it, is really where this is coming from. I did really appreciate her thoughts on the strong, what should you call it? The strong Black woman stereotype. I believe I read this quote in a reading vlog, but I want to share it again. The myth of the strong Black woman has made it so that white women can tell themselves that it is okay to expect us to wait to be equal with them because they need it more. The fact that Black women are supposedly tougher than white women means that we are built to face abuse and ignorance, and that our need for care or concern is less pressing. Again, I would have liked more on that specific topic because I found that something that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about or haven't read a lot about. Another topic that I would have liked a deeper dive on was carceral feminism. So the idea of incarceration as a punishment to men, because of course this crosses over into those racial issues and the overrepresentation of certain races as prisoners. I know I've kind of nitpicked this a lot, but it is a good book. I just want people to be aware of like what your level of knowledge is and like adjust your expectations, I guess, accordingly. Another book I read for nonfiction November is Dancing at the Pity Party, a Dead Mom graphic memoir by Tyler Fetter. I loved this so much. This is, I would say, a YA graphic memoir, but I think people from a lot of different age demographics could get a lot out of it, but it is especially useful for young people who have lost parents to just have someone to commiserate with and someone who gets it. Because if you're young, most likely you don't know anyone else your own age who has lost a parent. So I think it's very valuable in that sense. But also for young people who have not lost a parent, but who have perhaps a friend who has lost a parent, I think it could be a really great resource to kind of understand what they're going through as much as you can, and understand ways that you can be supportive to them. It is a very kind of like lighter tone. she's just someone who uses humor as a bit of a coping mechanism. And I think a lot of people do, and I think a lot of people would resonate with that. And also, I like how she talked about the awkwardness. Everyone talks about losing a parent. They talk about the sadness of grief, which of course is there. But I haven't really heard anyone talk about the awkwardness of dealing with other people who they don't know how to act towards you, and it puts this awkwardness on you to almost brush it off like, oh yeah, I'm fine, it's okay, because you don't want them to feel bad that you're sad. And how she talks about the awkwardness of talking with someone who you're not that close to, who maybe you only see every few years, who may not have heard that you lost a parent, and then they ask, how's your mom doing? How's your dad doing? And like the awkwardness of having to be like, oh, they died 2 years ago. She was just in my head, plucking out all the thoughts that I could not articulate about losing a parent. It was cathartic. I felt seen. Would recommend to anybody. The last nonfiction I read for Nonfiction November was The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder, Insanity, and the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary by Simon Winchester. And I have very mixed feelings about this. I think a lot of people would really like this, but I have concerns about how it was written, I guess. The Oxford English Dictionary, the making of it, was a huge endeavor. It took decades to accomplish. It was a very complex task that relied on hundreds, maybe even thousands of volunteers. It relied on a lot of volunteers. And the people who were paid to work on it also worked kind of like 7 days a week. It was just like a tiresome, fatiguing endeavor. This book centers one volunteer in particular, the titular Madman, and a little bit of the professor, who was the main person who was editor of the OED. Maybe a quarter to a third of this deals with the actual making of the dictionary and how that was accomplished, and the other 2/3 to 3/4 dealt more so as a biography of the men involved. A little bit of the professor, but mostly this is about a man named Dr. Minor who was suffering from a mental illness causing like paranoia, delusions. And he was a volunteer from the asylum where he was committed to because of a crime that there's no spoilers, just right in the title, murder. He had murdered someone in a delusional state, and he basically was one of the key volunteers in writing the dictionary. He had a lot of books in his, they call it a cell, where he was housed, imprisoned, at the asylum, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating. So the story itself is so interesting as a quasi-biography, interesting in terms of how dictionaries are put together. Like, I didn't even really think about it. There was no all-encompassing English dictionary. Like, there were dictionaries before this, but they might have been dictionaries of rare words or like obscure or obsolete words, but there was no dictionary of every single word in the English language. And try to imagine what that would take to put together. So in terms of the story, this is super compelling. However, I wish this had been in someone else's hands. Simon Winchester uses some turns of phrase, some word choices that I have some real problems with. As a couple of examples, Dr. Minor had kind of an insatiable appetite for sex, let's say, and frequented like sex workers, like those districts where people would go to hire sex workers. And this was written, I think, in 2005, so I realize that the term sex worker probably, I don't think, was really widely used at this time. But I would have expected the author to at least use the word prostitute. I feel like that is a little bit more neutral. But he said something about like, oh, Dr. Miner had contracted maybe a venereal disease or something from one of his most recent visits with a whore. Pardon me, like, it would be different if he had been quoting a letter or, if this is coming from the person in question, but that wasn't the case. This was the author's own word choice. And a similar thing happened, well, even worse, I think, actually, where he's talking about Dr. Miner's childhood and how he grew up and how while he was going through puberty, I think it was either India or Sri Lanka, I can't remember, but Dr. Miner, was kind of fetishizing, I think, the young girls there. They weren't clothed very much because it's hot, obviously, and he was lusting after them. And this is relevant to the biography section because Dr. Miner, they were missionaries, he was very religious, and so this lusting really was at odds with his belief system. So the fact that it's mentioned is fine, but how it is brought up, I think, is a problem. Again, if the author had been quoting from Dr. Miner's letters or, maybe someone else, like at the asylum, had made note of a comment that he had made reminiscing about this time in his life, that's one thing, but that's not what's happening. He's kind of imagining basically what Dr. Miner would have been thinking. And I'm going to quote this, and I think it's fetishizing young girls, and I don't like it. Especially fetishizing, like, their race. And there are the girls, young, chocolate-skinned, ever-giggling naked girls with sleek, wet bodies, rosebud nipples, long hair, cultish legs, and scarlet and purple petals folded behind their ears. There's a way to talk about Dr. Miner's problems with lust. There's a way to talk about that and how he struggled with those thoughts without then writing a paragraph sexualizing them. I was not about it. Beyond the choice of words and the turn of phrase, what really kind of lowered this, lowered this book in my opinion, was the use of speculation. So I wouldn't say that I don't recommend this book because I do think it's fascinating, and I haven't seen any other books dealing with this point in history with the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary. So if you want to learn more about it, then like this is the book as far as I can tell. But I would say you have to read it with a grain of salt because the author speculates a lot. The most egregious speculation that was in here was egregious. Well, you'll see why, but one reason is because it really doesn't have any bearing on anything else that happened in the book. It doesn't have anything to do with the making of the dictionary. It was just put in there as a little bit of like hot gossip, it felt like almost, which I think is completely out of place. The part in question that I found particularly egregious in terms of Winchester's speculation is, so Dr. Miner had murdered a man. This man left behind a wife and like 6-7 children. I think she was also pregnant at the time. Many years later, she, the widow, actually went to visit Dr. Miner at the asylum. She said she forgave him, and she visited him every month for a while, and they didn't really keep in friendship forever, but she went there monthly, and she would bring books from his place in London, or from a bookshop in London, to the asylum so that he didn't have to pay the postage fees. So obviously, they did strike up some sort of at least acquaintanceship, if not friendship. That's all that's known about that. We know that she visited him once a month for a while. She brought books with her, and according to some notes, that apparently she had forgiven him and accepted that he was not responsible for his actions because of his delusional state. But there's a section here where Winchester basically says that maybe they were having an affair. Like, she was lonely, she'd lost her husband, he had this like voracious sexual appetite, and he's locked up in this asylum, and like, who's to say they didn't? He does say, is it probable? Like, no. But is it impossible? Like, also no. But there is zero evidence that they were having an affair, that there was any sort of sexual relationship between the two of them. Zero. And the fact that it was put in there as some like salacious potential detail was frankly quite shocking. So yes, I have a lot of problems with how this was written, about the speculation in it, about the word choices. But I have to admit it was a compelling story. But if you're going to read it because you're interested in the subject matter of the making of the dictionary, which honestly was much more fascinating than I thought it would be. So this was an engaging story, but I really wish that it had been written by a different author. Those are all of the nonfiction books that I read in November. If you've read any of them, I would love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Also, let me know what you read for nonfiction November and what was your favorite read of the month. I would love to know. And thanks as always for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.